The late Jurassic was a terrible time to be a herbivorous dinosaur. Out on the prowl were a variety of large-bodied carnivores, and arguably the most dangerous of them all was this animal. This is Allosaurus. Here at the Paleon Museum, there's a full Allosaurus skeleton. And to get to know this killer carnivore better, we're going to start here at the tip of the snout and work our way all the way to the end of the tail. And as we go, we're going to see how different pieces of the animal's anatomy give us different clues and different insights into how this carnivore lived its prehistoric life. Let's begin with the skull. So we're going to play that game again of fill in the sensory organ. This is the nares, so that's where the nostril would be. Over here is the orbit, that's the position of the eyeball. You'll notice that between the orbit and the nares, we have another large opening. It's called the Orbital Fenestra, because it's anterior to the orbital fenestra. And the function of this opening is hotly debated. Now, you can still find it in modern-day birds. The thinking is that primarily the antorbital fenestra helps to lighten the skull, so makes this weapon much easier for the Allosaurus to wield. But it's also true that the nasal passage, where the air that the animal breathes in would travel back through the antorbital fenestra. And so maybe a major function of what's going on right here is that the animal's breath has a way of warming itself up before it's sent down into the central core of the body, and thereby helps to keep the animal warm. Now beyond that, we've got a big opening on the side for the expansion of the large jaw muscles, and though you can't quite see it, on top is another one for the same function. Now in reality, as scary as the jaws of Allosaurus are, the animal's bite is, by the standards of large carnivorous dinosaurs, not all that powerful, which is curious. And we'll hold that thought for a moment. Looking here at the front, you can see the rows of massive, scary teeth. Teeth of Allosaurus are medium grade as far as carnivorous dinosaurs go. They have medium-sized serrations, not particularly fine, not particularly robust, and they also have a very, very slight curve to them. That is, the edge itself, as it runs down the blade of the tooth, doesn't go smoothly. It's got a slight twist to it, meaning that when the tooth slashed down into soft flesh, it would rip all the way around the barrel of the tooth. That's a pretty scary bite. As we progress down to the lower jaw here, you can see another opening, the mandibular fenestra, for jaw muscles, again, not super duper large. Now, I would argue to you that Allosaurs have got probably the most aesthetically pleasing skulls of any carnivorous dinosaur. They're not as robust and thick as the skulls of Tyrannosaurs, and they're not quite as narrow as what you would see in the Velociraptor, but they also have this beautiful crest right here just in front of the eye that's formed by the lacrimal bone. The function of this crest is probably just display. The bone that makes it up is relatively thin, so this isn't a horn that an allosaur could use to ram into potential prey. Instead, it's probably just a flashy, showy device. I really do think it gives the skull nice lines, so I interpret Allosaur skulls as sort of being the Italian sports car of theropod dinosaurs. Have a look here at the lower jaw. See those little dimple marks right there? They're also present above the upper row of teeth. The thinking is that those are actually attachment sites for muscles associated with lips. We don't often see dinosaurs depicted as being particularly lippy. That's because having the lip removed really shows off the teeth. But in life, most carnivorous dinosaurs probably did have fairly large, fleshy lips that would serve the function of covering up the teeth and keeping them moist so that they wouldn't dry out and then potentially split. So even at a resting posture, that does mean Allosaurus does not have a bunch of teeth hanging out of its maw. Rather, it does mean, though, that in all likelihood, when Allosaurus was ready to do some biting, it could have gone into an impressive snarl. But while we're talking about soft tissue reconstruction, let's move on back to the animal's neck. Allosaurs have fascinating neck muscles. You'll notice, first off, the neck, as in most theropod dinosaurs, has a beautiful, graceful S-shaped curve to it. If you look up top of the cervical vertebra, you can see they've got relatively tall neural spines. That implies the presence of some very strong neck muscles. And that, oddly enough, has to do with the secret of the Allosaurus bite. Back here at the joint between the lower jaw and the skull proper, there's a lot of mobility, which is unusual. Allosaurus has got the capacity to really swing its lower jaw very, very far down, opening extremely wide. The explanation here is that Allosaurus may have been using its entire jaw as a cleaving, slashing weapon. Combined with an incredibly powerful neck, Allosaurus could open its mouth wide, swing its head back, and then thrust its entire head down in a great death stroke, leading to enormous lacerations with its bite. So it wasn't so much chomp, 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 as it was slash, slash, slash. This is not an attacking style that would be good at grabbing hold of small prey and just pinning it down, nor is it good at grappling and controlling medium-sized prey. But this might have been the perfect tool for going in quickly, delivering a huge bite, and then being able to retreat, if you were specifically adapted to prey on giant sauropods, a prey species that would be capable of stomping you with a single step. This animal could get in, do serious damage, probably to the underbelly of a long-necked dinosaur, and then retreat. That would be made even more effective if combined in a coordinated pack attack. And there is good evidence for pack hunting in Allosaurs because their bones are often found together. So this animal, we think, based on the jaw, based on the teeth, based on the musculature of the neck, is a specialized giant slayer. Now let's talk about the arms of Allosaurus. The arm of an Allosaurus, as you can see, is basically about the same size as my arms, but it's a whole heck of a lot stronger. And you can tell that, again, by thinking about where the different muscles would attach. This is, of course, the humerus, upper arm bone, and there you can see there's an enormous crest of bone on the side of the humerus. We call this the deltopectoral crest, and there would be enormous arm muscles attached to it. This is tremendously larger than any crest for muscle attachment I have on my arm. This is an incredibly strong-armed dinosaur. Allosaurus here could do a one-arm curl of a pickup truck. No problem. Massively powerful. Relative to, say, Tyrannosaurus rex, this is an arm, again, about the same size, but far stronger. On the Tyrannosaurus rex, the deltopectoral crest is weeny by comparison. And then, of course, also different from Tyrannosaur, have a look at the fingers. Allosaurus has got 3, and it is these 3 fingers, the equivalent of our thumb, then our index, and then our middle finger. The other 2 have been lost over evolutionary time, although as tetrapods, dinosaurs start off with 5 fingers. Notice that there's a specific pattern to the phalanges themselves. So we start off here in the thumb, we go 1, 2. Next, we go 1, 2, 3. And then we go 1, 2, 3, 4. That's different from the pattern in our hands where we go in our thumb 1, 2, that part's the same, and then 1, 2, 3, that's the same, but then 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. This pattern of digits is unique to theropod dinosaurs. All right, so let's talk about the function of the claws on Allosaurus. Normally when we think about dinosaur claws, the first image that comes to mind is the killing talon of a raptor dinosaur, like Velociraptor from Jurassic Park. These are scary claws, strong hook to it. Doesn't function anything like the slashing claw of a raptor dinosaur. So we can say a little bit about the covering over top of the bone here. If you have a look, see that strong groove? That line running all the way down, really, really deep. That's the present where there would be, that marks the present of a great big blood vessel. Blood vessel is there to supply blood, oxygen, and nutrients to a growing sheath of keratin. Again, same stuff your fingernails made of. You'd see the same kind of groove if we looked at the bony core of a cat claw or the bony core of a modern day bird of prey. But if you have a look at the underside of the claw, it does not come to a sharp edge. Rather, it's really, really flat right there. It would have been sharp at the tip, but a smooth, flat surface there on the inside. So it's not blade-like. Again, not like the foot claw of Velociraptor, not good at slashing. This is a claw that would be very, very good at piercing and then gripping and then holding on. This is a meat hook. Going along with that, the big bulge you see here on the underside of the claw, that's the tubercle for the attachment of the big ligament that runs on the underside of the finger and is responsible for pulling the claw down and giving it strength. The position of that ligament tells us something about what the claw is adapted to do. If it was positioned further back towards the articulation surface, that would mean a very simple, quick retraction. Would let the claw slash really quickly, would move rapidly. But this is positioned far away from that articulation point. It's not a fast-moving claw action, but it has gained tremendous leverage by being further from the articulation point. So this is a very, very strong gripping claw. This is a claw that would be good at stabbing into something and not letting go. Allosaurus could overpower small dinosaurs with it. Allosaurus could grab a hold of a big carcass and carry it back to its lair if it wanted to. So here we are in the belly of the beast. And what's missing? That's right, the gastralia. Gastralia have simply not been included in this particular skeletal mount, but remember those would be so-called belly ribs. So they would grow in basically starting right here at the pubis, and they would progress forward. And remember that their function is to expand and contract to help the dinosaur inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale. All right, time for a hip pop quiz. What's the bone up top that's connected to the sacral vertebrae? That's right, it's the ilium. Going forward, we've got the pubis, and going backwards, we've got the ischium. So of course, the Allosaurus is a classically termed saurischian dinosaur, or lizard-hip dinosaur. The pubis is going straight forward, a very narrow region right there for guts, because it's a carnivore. And then let's talk about what's sticking out of the hip and going down to the ground, the animal's legs. Here we've got the femur, and moving on down, we've got the tibia and fibula. And one thing I want to point out to you is the relative length of these bones. And that's because that can give us a lot of insight into how quickly a particular dinosaur is able to move around. We know from comparisons with modern day critters that ideally, to be a fast runner, you want to have a proportionately long lower leg going all the way down to the foot. You can see on Allosaurus, that distance there is much greater than the total length of just the femur. This is a relatively fast-moving dinosaur. It could certainly easily outrun us. And in the Jurassic period, Allosaurus is basically the fastest large-bodied carnivorous dinosaur. It has that major advantage over its potential carnivorous competitors. Okay, now let's talk about the foot. The feet of carnivorous dinosaurs are one of the most commonly underrepresented weapons in their arsenal. We think about feet being used to attack prey in the case largely of just the raptor dinosaurs, but really there's good reason to think they were utilized by the vast majority of big theropods. And you can tell that by having a look at just one of the foot claws. You can see the claw has got still a very, very strong curve to it. So it's not nice and flat. It doesn't rest flat on the ground. It's nowhere near as curved as one of the claws in the hands, but it's still got that significant shape to it. It's still hook-shaped. You can see that just as with the claws in the hand, there's a large groove running down the side, indicating that it was also covered in life by keratin. If we look at the claws on the feet of herbivorous dinosaurs, they do not have that curvature. They're very, very much so hoof-shaped. Similarly, if we look at the foot claws of herbivorous theropods that have gone the vegetarian route, things like ornithomimids or therizinosaurs, or indeed if we look at a lot of modern day ground birds that are herbivorous, like emus and ostriches, they have absolutely lost that curve. They sit very flatly. So an Allosaurus here, in addition to grappling with its clawed forelimbs and slashing with its jaws was also probably kicking out and slashing with its hind limbs. And that brings us to the tail, my favorite part of a dinosaur's anatomy. The base of the tail of Allosaurus is adapted to help the animal run, to propel itself, running down from below those transverse processes are called the ribs, and attaching there to the chevrons. In this huge space underneath the hip is where the caudofemoralis muscle sits. It's got an attachment there to the femur, and that's what pulls backward on the leg, giving the animal all of its locomotive oomph. But the caudofemoralis does not go down the tail forever. Rather, it tapers out right about this point here. Now, Allosaurus represents a new wave of large-bodied carnivorous dinosaurs that took the late Jurassic by storm, and their tail was critical to their success. They're doing something very different. As we move down the tail, have a look at the Zygopolises, those little forward-pointing prongs. They get progressively longer and longer, and their function is to hold the tail together. They help to keep it extra stiff. Allosaurus does not have a highly flexible tail, especially as you get down towards the very tip. This is not a tail that's able to twist and shake and waggle and wave itself about. Rather, it's held relatively firmly. That allows the tail probably to serve a better function as a dynamic stabilizer, as an appendage that can be swung as a unit from side to side to help serve as a counterbalance as the animal needs to pivot and turn. Now, it means that the entire body of the Allosaurus is less flexible, but it's probably better at being able to bank and turn while it's on the go. This is an adaptation for maneuverability as you're on the run. This is an adaptation also tied then to the long leg bones of Allosaurus. This is just a faster carnivore.